In Valorant's 5th year, the game we love has already changed so much. Consistent favourites have always emerged from Americas despite falling short so far this year. Pacific has only grown stronger since that first drop of success and have back-to-back Masters titles to show for it. And while China may be the youngest, their champs win has begun a streak of top 3 finishes with plenty more to come. Can our 2-year wait for glory be brought to an end on home soil? And who will tie the knot with the Champions Trophy in the City of Love? In this episode of Team Report, I'll be covering all 12 rosters in VCT EMEA, looking at their transfers in the break and assessing their chances heading into Paris. Let's start with Group Alpha. Team Heretics returned from Toronto after a disappointing end to their EMEA campaign, a flawless group stage into another grand final loss and winless Masters appearance. In the build-up during Stage 1, the general consensus was that Heretics were the best that EMEA could send to Canada and had an outside chance at challenging for the title, much like last year. However, the reality is much different. Failing to qualify to Bangkok and performing the weakest of our 3 representatives means that there is work to be done for champs. The caveat to their performance abroad being that they only lost to the eventual champions and 3rd place runner-up, but we know this roster holds itself to the highest standards and should still be putting away teams no matter the quality. They will have momentum at their backs after wins outside of VCT in the mid-season, and a lot of confidence coming back to Berlin, which teams tend to prefer over a longer break. Heretics did struggle with burnout a lot in 2024 with the amount of games they ended up playing, but I don't think that will be an issue here. It's also another aspect which having such a consistent roster has really helped them benefit from. Rian's played a key role in picking up some steam for them and is the beating heart of this roster. If he can perform to similar levels as he did at Champs last year, then it will be a massive benefit and gives them a serious chance. We also saw Boo have huge impact at that point in time and be a driving force for clutches and morale when they played FNATIC between the splits. These are all the kind of signs that get you excited for Heretics, but it has to translate in VCT. The goal for this roster continues to be lifting a trophy this year, and while a domestic win would help dilute that thirst, I also see it growing stronger heading into Paris if they can perform at home again. The kind of hunger built up from 2 near misses on the global stage can only be satiated with success in those bigger arenas. This team has always dealt well with setbacks, and I expect them to be grinding even harder to rectify things this stage. Heretics have the consistency and environment required to reach the top step. Another grand final appearance should be on the cards, pending any big shakeups. The switch to an international squad for BBL makes you wonder why they hadn't done it sooner. Kickoff gave us hope, Stage 1 was so close, and belief remains to be everything at the business end of Stage 2. Yumpy could already cement himself as one of the best IGLs regionally, having made the transition only this year alongside former teammates Safe and Nats from Liquid. I would argue that he has impressed me the most of the 3, but Stage 2 is the final chance to give BBL the all-important 4th place finish, which would bring them to their first ever Champions event. It's been no easy feat working with 3 rookies, but BBL already look ready for any challenge since landing their inaugural playoff appearance and derby wins over mainstay Masters attendees FUT. Profek and Levin both starred individually, and Sociable takes any role he needs to with grace, doing multiple roles for the team to a high standard. Magnum has slotted right back in and picked up where Vac left off, and more than anything else, consistency is super important for these players. Having a super high ceiling is great, but the skill floor also needs to give a strong foundation. That's something which Magnum has definitely helped with. Levin can be one of the best duelists in the league on his day, but plays a hyper-aggressive style which can be countered if teams are prepared for it. That could easily create frustration when things go against him, as he's also responsible for creating a lot of plans in the team as a vocal piece of the puzzle. BBL will need him on top form to secure their spot in playoffs again. Coach Pal has also earned himself a promotion to head coach after an impressive job so far this year with the team, being the workhorse that hasn't stopped to bring them up to a competitive level. The pressure is still on BBL making a change in staff even with the success they've had until this point, as things could quickly turn sour if the stage doesn't start well. BBL are definitely the easy choice for Dark Horse. The only thing that holds them back is a slight lack of big stage experience compared to the other rosters that they're competing with, who've all been to international events already this year. It does make them feel a little bit fragile when it comes to qualifying for champions, and we've seen a few times this year when they reach 11 rounds, there has been some difficulty closing out maps cleanly. On the other hand, they are minor improvements away from being a serious contender with a monster mentality and should be anybody's shoo-in for joining the other 15 teams in the French capital in only a couple months' time. As the next generation of Turkish talent rapidly descends upon VCT EMEA, FUT have recalled an old god from their bench. FUT have always made gradual player changes during the off-season, and with Zeus coming in at the start of the year, it felt like they'd built up their strongest squad to date. But it's all been downhill with the end of kickoff. Failure to qualify for the second Masters event of the year for the first time since partnerships began has thrown the camp into jeopardy. The departure of longtime servant Ata captain signals to me the end of an era, and the roster which lines up for Stage 2 feels like the last dance for the old guard. Succeed or a rebuild could be on the cards. Although he looked like a monster in groups, FUT was so reliant on Zeus to perform if they were to progress in playoffs, and you could see that when he wasn't having the best game, they massively struggled. I mean, could we really be preparing for CNED on smokes? We've seen top duelists transition to anchor roles before. Lime in Challengers would be a good example of it, despite it being at a lower level. But we've also seen how it can go wrong. Tamasi being made to play Omen is a decision that still upsets me to this day. There's a possibility we see FUT go the double duelist route and run it back, but putting cracks on anything other than Fade or KO isn't something that they've been willing to do until this point, and I don't think that changes here either. He peaked again early on in this stage, getting back to levels we haven't seen post-2022, and I really enjoyed their Fade Teho meta read, but ultimately we just didn't see enough of it. Fracture leaving the map pool won't be kind to them, but maybe the initiator buffs and shift back to KO is exactly what FUT need. The surprise addition of Jonta as coach is definitely a welcome one. Creator of the Ukrainian Valorant community, he has helped push it forwards in many ways. Most recently, he coached Boars in Northeast, the first fully Ukrainian lineup we have seen in Challengers, otherwise coming from a rich background, with his own playing career in CS, also coaching teams including FPX and Heretics in EMEA, as well as Fennel and Zeta Division in Pacific. There are potential language issues since he is not a Turkish native speaker. There is the possibility that getting across all the ideas in timeouts instead will fall upon Sway, the assistant coach who was retained from Guy's stint over the last few years. But I think he can raise the overall playing level and bring fresh ideas to the table for what is an aging FUT roster. Either this team is going to show up in a ridiculous way, or totally struggle. I feel like there's little separating the two, and I'm just so torn. Few people saw this coming, and even fewer know what's going to happen next. FUT are going to need a lot of things to go their way if they want to make a deep run, but it's Valorant at the end of the day. Anything is possible. Most of my viewers aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you're enjoying the video and want to see more content like this, please consider helping me out and turning on notifications as well. Thanks, and let's get back to the teams. The ultimate goal for Team Vitality this year is to go to Champions Paris and win on home soil. All the French clubs have ramped up their spending and revised their rosters in the hopes of playing in front of a home crowd, and Team Vitality are the most invested in this respect, bringing in Les and Durka with a combined 3 international trophies and plenty of domestic experience. The super teams succeeded starting off the year, but cracks in the chemistry were shown in Bangkok, and Trex was removed. It didn't take long before things started spiraling out of control. Leadership and role issues have plagued them from the start, but it took a real stress test to bring them to the surface, and with an early playoffs exit against fellow underperformers FUT, this is the last chance to make 2025 theirs. Going on in the stead of Safe, and the face of this rebuild, is Unfake, a gun for hire who has plied his trade across the second tier with 5,000 career rounds logged on Sova. He is everything on paper which Vitality had been missing before. Now having a dedicated IGL and a master of their role will make him a cornerstone of this team. Ultimately, however, he is entirely unproven at this level, and for many, wouldn't be the number one choice. We saw him lead a Job Life side earlier in the year, which was incredibly underwhelming at the first Challengers EMEA event and failed to qualify for the second. Working with a new coaching staff for the first time since the start of 2024, this is also a big test for Faded, who was put in a difficult spot after the first stage with some damage control to do. The biggest question for this group will be, can they get the best out of Durka, and what ideas does Unfake have to harness the best raw talent our region holds onto? Most of the discourse around him for Stage 1 was that he was being set up to fail, and that teams were acutely aware of how to counter him. Few players have operated as consistently as Durka since the start of VCT and at such a high level, although 2025 is shaping up to be a low point in his career so far since making the switch to Vitality. It feels like an overreaction in some ways, but this is the ridiculously high standard that you set when he's only ever failed to qualify for 3 international events in his career. Kovac is the other player change for Vitality from the DACH League and was originally considered to make the step up before they elected to recruit Sivov at the start of Stage 1, finding himself on the trial list for some time but finally getting his shot at the big leagues. Kix has proven consistent and been dependable wherever Vitality have needed him. Despite being at the brunt of the roster changes, he is my most likely candidate for smokes. Considering the other teams in the group stage, Vitality find themselves in an awkward spot. They have more than enough firepower to make playoffs, but the last stage just felt so underwhelming, and there's no guarantees that this will be an improvement. They should still be in a position to compete for top 4, but how much of a dent could they possibly leave in a Heretics or BBL? With the weight of a nation on their back, we'll have to see if the Golden Hornets can punch their golden ticket to champions. GiantX have already made multiple changes from their kickoff run, promoting Ara and Flickless from affiliate team UCAM Esports before the end of Stage 1. They got off to a good start, taking a map away from FNATIC and securing a 6-pointer over Apeks. The writing is on the wall for this GX side, however. The second worst record of the partnered teams post-merger, and a history of being the potential dark horses, is one which always amounted to nothing. Keeping on cloud from the Giants team that made champions in 2023 through the LCQ, has always shown that he can hang with the best in the region, and his calling definitely suited younger players more to express their talents, having the second youngest combined age in the league behind the new Gentlemates lineup. Although his duo with Coach Pipson seems to have a differing vision for the game. Role issues with players like Tomasi and Runner being wasted in the previous system strips back the hope that I hold out to for this to be an improvement. We really need to see GX commit to playing their own brand of Valorant, whatever that may be. Throughout the Teho meta, they were one of the few non-believers and took far too long to lean into stronger compositions or play to their team's strengths. Westside is probably the best player on this roster. After Cloud has stepped back from being the star at the end of last year, he has shown flashes of brilliance through the dark times, and my hope for this stage is that we see GX get the best out of him, in a system that also works for Ara and Flickless as well, given the time they've now had to fully be integrated into the team. Grabinho joining never felt like a straightforward decision, and I'm sure there are politics which factor into this move taking place, but despite the fact that his stats were poor on KOI, and often he would be lamented for how he played, I think it's possible to make an exception just based on the team. Some may remember his time on the old KOI or UCAM in the Spanish leagues before VCT, and even up to last year he definitely had his moments. Maybe a fresh start could roll back the years for him and for the rest of this team, or maybe we're just asking a bit too much. Worlds apart from the team which first entered the big leagues at the end of 23, Gentlemates take their final stand in VCT this stage. The run requires them to at least qualify for the playoff stage to avoid the drop back to challengers, with their guest slot running its course for 2 years, unlike other promoted teams getting only one chance. Last stage showed serious signs of promise with a win over an exhausted Team Liquid to start off the group, but this progressively diminished as the weeks continued. A decisive loss to FUT after 5 overtimes on the second map sent them spiralling, as for every map which seemed to match their opponent's level was followed by a quick dismissal on the next. Both kickoff and stage 1 came with player changes, as the organisation has consistently been making intermittent upgrades as talent becomes available up the pyramid, and their latest 2 signings show serious ambition. Prox was electric in the GameFest LAN final played in Istanbul, and looks like a really solid choice for controller, knowing when to take his fights, when to disengage, while backing himself to the nth degree in every duel. Vikaj has a great track record in France, and my first exposure to him was at Spike Nations in Madrid during the 2023 off-season. He has the ability to call, play duelist, or initiator, and it's the latter which he should be picking up here. A super flexible homegrown player which will give mates a lot of options. And the biggest of them all, Comeback. He has raving reviews from Tier 2, and for good reason. He was the better duelist player in the grand final of Ascension versus Kayak up until the final map. He's played on the stage at the Riot Games Arena before, let alone the multiple LAN finals that he won at home in Turkey. And before he played, no team had ever gone back-to-back domestically. But Comeback put Pacific top of the pile 3 times in a row and took grand finals MVP multiple times for himself. This is the poster boy for Turkey's next generation in Valorant. Anybody would have been rushing to get his signature during the downtime, as he became eligible to play VCT only 1 month ago. Gentlemates have been able to get reps in 2 different third-party events in the run-up to their Stage 2, which kicks off on July 17th, to help build morale, and even won a Turkish event against Na'Vi in a best of 5. This is still a very young squad, in fact the youngest now in the league after their changes. So much expectation, yet still I feel like they have an outside chance. Group Alpha is definitely the most evenly pitched between the two, with multiple teams having the taste of an international event this year, getting close to attending, or desperately needing one to meet their own ambitions, whether it's for survival or scrutiny's sake. There are some tough calls to be made, but this is my ranking for the group stage. The top 2 spots feel locked in with how many reps Heretics and BBL have so far this year, with the latter struggling to win the head-to-head. Vitality are the only other name that could shake things up, but they'll be taking things one step at a time. And finally, FUT seems like a wild choice to exclude from playoffs. I just don't see the vision right now. Next up are other 6 teams in Group Omega. The only team to qualify for both international events this year, Liquid are looking to make it 3 for 3 for the first time in their history. With the exception of when they were crowned league champs in 2023, there's always been a missing piece. And the same can be said for their roster this year. With a 6th man scenario, as Penny was called in for extra support in Toronto, one final change has been made, as Trex returns to VCT EMEA, spending the last stage watching from the sidelines despite winning kickoff with Vitality. Everyone saw how that stint ended, with a row headed on Twitter by Durka after Trex took shots at his former team in the wake of Vitality crashing out of playoffs. This was a seriously bad look for the 21-year-old, having one of VCT's veteran duelists labelling him impossible to work with and tanking his stocks as a teammate in the process. Trex has a lot to prove and put right. His individual skill places him right amongst the best in the league. However, a lack of strong mental or maturity has sold him short from becoming one of the greats. One of the biggest questions I had for Liquid at the start of the year was how good would Nat's in-game leadership be? The answer was resounding, but this is his most difficult task yet. If he can get the most out of Trex in this roster, they'll be champs bound in no time. We've seen the motivational speeches and inspired comebacks. If Nats gets the team chemistry right here, then you can add it to his list of success stories. On paper, it feels like the perfect move, a main initiator player as he described himself in their welcome video, who has a history of flexing onto Sentinel, enabling Liquids to continue their double Sentinel comps when needed. Serial did the best job he could playing new roles for the first time, but with the mechanical intensity of agents like Astra being tested for the first time in an unfamiliar LAN environment, it almost felt rigged from the start at times. He managed to get them to another Masters event, which would have been their goal from the start, but this club 25 years in the making still wants more. Roles have been a point of contention for this team from the outset, and was likely factored into their first string of changes with Kamek to some degree. I'm wondering if there will be a knock-on effect here as well, and if Kiko will continue to show us his duelist, or if he will have to become a dedicated smokes player. Trex can also play Raze, after all, he has logged the most officials on her, so maybe it's a simple one-to-one exchange. I'm interested to see how Liquid do. Their coaching staff have done excellently well in setting the team up and running some fresh takes on the meta, being one of the few teams utilising Waylay. Between them and FNATIC, should be favourites to move on from this group, but there are a lot of sleeper teams in Omega that could be difficult to put away. Top 4 does feel more than achievable though, especially if they get the most out of the honeymoon period early on and start strong against KOI. Back-to-back finals for FNATIC would have far exceeded most expectations coming into the first stage. Losing their first best of 5 since 2023 stings, although we all remember that year for different reasons. The only missing piece now is the Champions Trophy. Questions around Alfier's performance at home were settled on the international stage. Ridiculous individual performances in the game against Sentinels and in the grand finals helped carry them through the tournament. The hallmark of a great player is one who can make it through a slump in their career, and often it's something that individual needs to work through themselves. And as someone who holds themselves to world-class standards, seeing him excel again was a pleasure to watch. If Alka can keep up this form heading back into Stage 2, then FNATIC will be fighting fit. Chronicle's most played agent is Viper, as FNATIC play double controller on half their maps, but he fulfills multiple roles on the team similar to Alpha. The fact that FNATIC have so many options when it comes to composition makes them all the more difficult to play against. His Sage on Icebox has been a really nice shift from the meta in recent years, and going back to basics but providing some consistent results. Kayak has been the signing of the 2025 season, one of the best rookies we've seen in VCT EMEA, but the potential was always there. The first time I saw Kayak play was during a streamer tournament. There's a vlog on this channel if you want to look it up. He bagged 16 kills in 3 rounds, back-to-back aces, and a 6k, of course. A couple years later, and he was tearing it up in challenges under the Apeks banner under no coincidence. And from Toronto into the break, he's held a record consecutive 22 maps without going negative. While Kickoff raised concerns if he would be able to match Durka or not, Kayak has quickly found his place and comfort on the stage. Crashies was always a Rolls Royce of a player and has gotten back to his brilliant best in the black and orange. Boaster has found himself a new boyfriend, and the American has found a new home at FNATIC. The environment has helped him to develop way more consistency through a change of routine, bringing him into form once more, and finally challenging for more trophies. Boaster has always been one to receive criticism himself, but that's not what this video is for. 2025 has been a great year for him as an in-game leader. When you look at the calls he's making mid-round, and even some of the individual performances, such as the G2 game or picking up his first ace domestically, there are reasons to be confident about his leadership again. Ultimately, that's his job. The amount of rounds won through preparation and his reads, which have only improved having Milan at the helm with the support of Scut, far outweigh what cost FNATIC a few errors here and there. Boaster and this FNATIC core are one of the all-time greats. There's only one more step to cement their legacy at the top. You don't need to know the results to consider them a contender, they'll be there at the end of the year. The partnered era has been underwhelming for Na'Vi. Starting out in 2023 with a Masters winning core and a Champions winning duelist, the storied organisation inherited a team lined with history for success, but that was short-lived. Last year's results and the departure of Doombros spelled out the end of the FPX side we once knew. Expectations for this club have always been high, and with the rebuild to start their 2025 campaign, the team itself would have felt the same way, despite the lack of faith from the community. By the end of Stage 1, they find themselves in the same position they were at the end of last year, but with reinvigorated confidence that their goal is still achievable. With each passing iteration of Na'Vi, one thing has remained consistent. There has been some friction between Angel and his duelist, each having their own unique styles of play. This stage is no different as the Ukrainian organisation look to the Northeast League to fill the shoes of Koala Noob. Alexic is the sole player change which they will be hoping is enough to clinch them a spot in Paris. Another candidate for a task which he should put his own spin on. Ardis, CNED, and Koala Noob all share in common that they are very credible oppers. This is something which Alexic also brings to the table, but in general has a much greater range in my opinion. For most of this year with Zero Tenacity, you also see him using the rifle a lot more and playing a traditional entry role where required. From last year with Go Next in their Ascension run, all the way back to when he debuted in East for the first time, Alexic has been a confidence-based player. The end of his 2024 campaign was a low point for him personally, putting much of their downfall in the group stages on his own performance, but much like his previous teammates Mini and Profek, who now also find themselves in VCT EMEA, this was a necessary experience in his development, and now he feels more matured as a player and suited to this environment. The extra support that Na'Vi can offer through their performance coach Zuza will also be a massive benefit to his abilities. Looking at the rest of the team, Hero has reached and in some ways exceeded his potential shown on FNATIC last year, a deciding factor in making him the transfer target of this rebuild. He remains to be capable of pulling off series-defining 1v3 clutches and demonstrating the individual skill which landed him a spot on this roster. We have seen a gradual shift to putting him on more duelist roles, and the BTC Turk event during the break featured a test run of Xiao on Sentinel for a few maps, but we'll have to see if this one sticks or not. Ultimately, Na'Vi are a team you always expect to find in the playoff stages, and that is when they will truly be tested. The team is in a strong position right now, and only gets stronger with Alexic's inclusion. The question will be if he can keep the level consistent in the most important games, and if Angel can get what he wants out of another young player with a lot of pressure on him. Karmine Corp will be hoping to flood their home stadium with fans and raise the blue wall in Ivry-Courcouronnes for the group stages of Champions Paris, but for now that feels like a pipe dream. KC narrowly made a Stage 1 playoffs exit to Na'Vi by a margin of only 2 rounds across 3 maps. HazzaJC hadn't finished any lower than 4th in a domestic league until last year as Loud was pulled apart for scraps, and he decided to close that chapter of his career for good. It has taken time to implement his vision at KC, and with varying success. The relationship between him and Eng has been strenuous at times, and fruitful in others, but it feels like this stage could be a watershed moment for the pair. There has been a distinct IGL problem in EMEA as of recent, with even less confidence in giving dedicated leaders from Tier 2 the chance to run a partnered project. HazzaJC was brought across the pond for one job, and with the notoriety he holds, bring this group of players to the most important event in the club's history. The track record is there when you look at previous rebuilds and developing young talent, but this is a completely different level of task. The IGL's affinity for compositions which run double walls, which he helped pioneer in 2023, has bled into the pre-existing DNA of KC, to the frustrations of some. At the same time, he has started to introduce double duelist looks to the face of the team, putting the flexible Aves in a position of power and giving him more autonomy to influence the game on Phoenix or Raze in his rookie year. The way they've been playing Sunset during the break does give me confidence that their map pool is improving heading into the business end of this year. And if you consider the players that they have on paper, Martine with 2 years of experience now in the Riot Games arena, Sugetsu with global successes, and even Elite who has built on being the hard carry for Turkish BBL last year, it leaves you expecting more of this team, that they should be the ones who are a dark horse, and maybe they still can be. Too many close calls to count and fine margins going against them have plagued this team from returning to an international stage until now, but another European event might be exactly what is needed, especially with the incentive of their own hallowed ground. Whether they make it or not, you expect Paris to be full of KC fans. This stage is make or break if they want someone closer to home to cheer about. Following on from the first stage, change was expected for KOI, and by the final game you could tell that the remaining players were there to enjoy the borrowed time that they had left. This is a rebuild which divides opinion of the KOIcitos, who have followed their team throughout the tumultuous 3 years they've spent in VCT. Many were calling for their successful Phoenix Academy project, Spanish champions and top 3 challengers EMEA team to be promoted in place of the main roster. The org obliged in part, with Monster the next in line to earn up his call to Berlin, being one of those who missed out on Ascension in 2023 with Ascent. He joins a growing list of Czech talent to have arrived in VCT during the last year, although his name has always been high up the list. It was 2 years ago that Monster took a break from competing to focus on his studies. Now having just completed them before the season resumes, KOI should have made the most of their investment in the prospect we never saw entirely realised. Another player from East who many expected to see in the big leagues post-2023 is BaddyG. He finds himself part of this KOI reunion with former teammates to act as a cornerstone of the roster, bringing solidity to the Smokes role. Baddy loves an Omen TP, and this risk-averse, off-the-wall playstyle might be exactly what the team have been lacking for the last few years. A top 2 finish of his own in the Spanish League shows that he's still got it after bursting onto the scene with the original FPX core as a stand-in years ago. The former Ascend duo's opponent and eventual Ascension winner Natunk also makes his full return to the Berlin stage, seeing through 2024 with the Gentlemate squad before jetting off to Americas to join Leviathan in a move which surprised many. Speaking to his coach from the time, Ito Pata, his reason for signing the Frenchman was his incredible work ethic and desire to fill a role in that team which ultimately was too big for any player. When he made his Tier 1 debut on Duelist, he topped the ACS charts in EMEA. There is still a view to bring his Phoenix out of retirement, but I expect a more supportive role from him in this lineup. Filu had been active in the second tier for several years before joining KOI, but absolutely delivered in his first foray to VCT. He's the one player I would definitely have kept heading into a rebuild, so there are a few notes to be made on his behalf. We just need to see some more consistency from him. For all of the changes and reasons that KOI have to get excited again, there are still questions with this team. Flyer's role as in-game leader hasn't lived up to the level touted as one of North America's most promising players from Challengers heading into the year, and of course being one of a few exports which joined the league. His contributions don't have to be assessed on just kill impact if the calling is there, and perhaps with the right pieces and Deadwood removed, there is a greater chance. I still struggle to see KOI challenging for a playoffs place with this iteration. When you compare them to the rest of the group, it's just such a short time frame to expect much. However, I can see them picking up the odd win or an upset result. Since the year began, all eyes in the Apeks camp have been laser focused on their Stage 2 survival. The step up to VCT has been a rude awakening for the core of Avova and Mulsi. Retaining their spot as a team on a 9-series loss streak in all competitions is as difficult as you'd expect, especially when the organisation's history finds itself so intertwined with stringing many wins together instead, holding records for the most the North or East regions have ever seen. Penny is already familiar with Apeks, spending time at their shared office block with Team Liquid ahead of his Toronto homecoming. This proved to be a total success for the young gun, making his long-awaited return to the international stage, ending a record-breaking absence which began way back in 2021 with version 1. Part of a 6-man roster, he traded seats with Serial for maps where Liquid needed more firepower, playing duelist and narrowly exiting groups to eventual winners Paper X. This transfer means that Batu will be returning to the role which he was originally selected to fill with the departure of Solkus. There was a lot of critique surrounding his Sova during kickoff, and I would love to see a double duelist look from Apeks, where he reprises Yoru and Penny plays Raze beside him. This style had been effective for them before, and the meta this year has facilitated this kind of play. They previously trialled it on Split to give an example, and that was one of the stronger maps in what otherwise could be considered a very weak pool for them this year. Close losses to FUT and FNATIC represent the potential for them to take this idea further. Olizera, another of the changes, had been part of the KOI Phoenix Academy since January, residing in challenges for his fair share of time. But they could very well be made to rue the mistake of the one that got away in the group stages. Speaking to different people in their setup, he was always described as a ready-made VCT player. He boasted the highest ACS of any Sentinel in the playoff stages of the second Challengers EMEA tournament this year, often top fragging, remaining aggressive mid-round on attack side, consistently providing an outlet through lurks, and always holding his sight on defense. In preparation for one of the game days, I saw him streaming ranked at 1 AM the night before, and he still logged onto the server the next day and put on a top performance. He has the right mentality and grind to fit this Apeks project, and I expect them to build around him if they want to succeed. Apeks, even with their roster moves in the mid-season break, feel like a team of players trying to find their place in an ever-aggressive ecosystem. Compared to other teams at the level, they lack the experience but have done good business in the downtime, which feels necessary for any chance at survival, however fleeting that reality may be. The overall makeup of Group Omega means that some teams that would generally be considered weaker or have missed standout performances so far this year still have a chance to make the playoff stage. This falls right into the hands of Apeks, but unfortunately I still think the dream is far-fetched to make it back to Ascension. I hope they can pull it off, but with Liquid and FNATIC in their last few games, they must start strong. The other teams generally fall around the midfield, and the 3rd to 4th spots are up for grabs. So, I've said my piece and the stage is set. VCT EMEA resumes in less than 24 hours. Who do you think will make it to Champions Paris? Let me know in the comments section. I hope our teams can bring some more silverware to polish in the off-season, but for now though, I'll see you all in Berlin.